Darkness was the default state of the world for nearly all of human history. When the sun vanished, true night fell, absolute and complete. This is the historical mystery we are exploring today. The story of how people fought back the shadows long before a simple switch could flood a room with light. You will gain a complete understanding of the ingenious, perilous, and often surprising journey from the first flickering flames to the brilliant lamps that powered the 19th century. We will uncover how the wealthy bathed their halls in honey-scented light, while the poor made do with smoldering marsh plants, and why some living rooms could literally explode in pursuit of a brighter glow. What forgotten piece of everyday technology from your own family's past might tell this story? Our story begins not with invention, but with conquest. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity's relationship with light was a fragile dance with a dangerous ally, fire. Long before we could create it at will, we learned to capture it from wildfires, to nurture it, and to carry it into the deepest caves. Early humans like Homo erectus did not just use fire for warmth or to cook food, they understood its power to push back the darkness. A single hearth in a cave became more than a source of heat. It was a primitive chandelier, casting a warm, flickering glow that defined the boundaries of safety and community against an infinite night. The technology was brutally simple. A torch could be made by wrapping resinous pine wood in a bundle of grasses, its sticky sap helping it burn longer and brighter. A simple hearth of stones contained a pile of glowing embers that provided a steadier, ambient light. But this light came at a tremendous cost. The fuel was constant, requiring someone to always be gathering more wood, more dried grasses, more animal fat to feed the flames. The light itself was feeble, throwing deep, dancing shadows that made the world beyond its circle feel even more immense and unknown. And then there were the ever-present dangers, making every lit room a calculated risk. The smoke from burning green wood or fatty fuels would fill an enclosed space, stinging eyes and choking lungs. A slow suffocation traded for the ability to see. Sparks leapt unpredictably, threatening to ignite bedding, clothing, or the very structure of a home. A dropped torch could mean catastrophe. So for millennia, light was not a convenience, it was a precarious bargain. You gained a circle of visibility, of warmth, of gathered stories, but you invited a capricious, hungry element into your most intimate space. The history of lighting begins here, with humanity holding a fragile, burning branch against the void, and wondering if there could ever be a better way. This constant, smoky struggle for light defined life for centuries, but slowly, a more refined tool emerged from the hearth. The humble tallow candle became the heartbeat of the medieval world, a small, portable sun you could hold in your hand. Its creation was a messy, domestic alchemy. Fat from butchered sheep or cattle, called tallow, was carefully rendered, melted down and strained to remove impurities. Then, a simple wick, often made from twisted linen or cotton, was dipped repeatedly into the warm, greasy liquid, building up layer upon layer of solid fat. The result was a candle, but it was far from the clean, romantic flicker we might imagine. A tallow candle burned with a dim, yellowish flame that constantly fought to stay alive. It guttered and smoked, producing a thick, acrid black soot that coated ceilings and walls. The smell was unforgettable, a pungent, greasy odor of burning animal fat that permeated everything, from clothing to food. This was the everyday light for most people, a sputtering, smelly companion that made reading difficult and left a film of grime on every surface. For the wealthy, however, there was a luxurious alternative, beeswax. candles made from the honeycomb of bees burned with a much brighter, cleaner, and almost sweet-smelling flame. They were vastly more expensive, as harvesting enough wax required the labor of countless bees. Consequently, the very quality of light in your home became a direct display of your wealth and status. A great hall illuminated by dozens of steady, sweet-smelling beeswax candles announced power and refinement, while a peasant's cottage relied on the faint, smoky glow of a single tallow dip. The candle, therefore, was more than a source of light. It was a social signal, casting long shadows of inequality with every flicker. The profound difference between tallow and beeswax was not just seen, but smelled and felt. In a wealthy manor house, the air carried the faint, sweet perfume of honey, not the greasy reek of burning fat. This luxury light began in the chaos of the beehive. Harvesting beeswax was an incredibly laborious process. Beekeepers, often using simple smoke to calm the colonies, would carefully cut the honeycomb from woven skep hives. The comb then had to be crushed, heated, and strained repeatedly to separate every precious ounce of golden wax from the honey. It took the entire seasonal labor of tens of thousands of bees to produce just a few pounds of wax, making it one of the most valuable commodities in the medieval world, sometimes even used as a form of currency. This immense effort translated directly into a superior flame. Beeswax candles burned with a brilliant, steady, and nearly smokeless light. They did not gutter or drip excessively, and their warm, honeyed scent transformed a room. Because of their purity and cost, these candles became the exclusive domain of two powerful institutions, the church and the nobility. In cathedrals, banks of beeswax tapers were not merely practical, they were theological. Their clean, bright flame and sweet smell were seen as metaphors for divine light and purity, a fitting offering to the heavens that also illuminated sacred manuscripts and awe-inspiring architecture. In royal courts, the message was one of temporal power. The ability to light an entire banquet hall with dozens, even hundreds, of these clean burning candles was a staggering display of wealth. It announced that the host could command the labor of countless bees and beekeepers, a subtle but potent reminder of their reach and resources. So the light in a room did more than allow people to see each other. It told everyone exactly where they stood. The flicker of a candle became a silent language of class, dividing the sooty, dim world of tallow from the radiant, perfumed realm of wax. But for the vast majority of people, the luxury of even a tallow candle was often out of reach. Their solution was a humble, flickering ghost of light called the rushlight. This was the peasant's candle, a testament to human ingenuity in the face of profound scarcity. It began in the marshes and wet meadows, where tall, reed-like plants called rushes grew in abundance. In late summer, families would harvest them, gathering armfuls of these green stems. The preparation was a meticulous, time-consuming chore. Each rush was carefully peeled, but not completely. A skilled hand would strip the outer green skin along one side only, leaving a single narrow strip to act as a spine, holding the inner white pith intact. This pith was the secret. It was highly absorbent, perfectly designed to soak up whatever flammable liquid was available. That liquid was rarely precious tallow. Instead, it was the leftover kitchen grease from cooking, the drippings from a piece of bacon, or any other scrap of animal fat that could be spared. The peeled rushes were laid to soak in a pan of this warm grease, sometimes for days, until the pith was fully saturated. Once dried, they became rushlights. To use one, you would place it in a special iron holder, often a pair of jaws on a stand, with the unpeeled strip facing upward. This strip acted as a wick, and when lit, the greasy pith would slowly burn. The light it gave was meager in the extreme, a faint, sputtering flame that produced more smoke than illumination, casting a dim, dancing glow for perhaps 15 or 30 minutes before it was consumed entirely. The smell was of burning fat and marsh plant, a far cry from the honeyed scent of beeswax. This was the reality of light for countless households, a fleeting, smoky glimmer painstakingly crafted from marsh weeds and kitchen scraps, a stark and tangible measure of the distance between a lord's bright hall and a crofter's dark cottage. Yet even the steady flame of a rushlight was a fleeting local glow, a small victory against the dark. To truly conquer the night, civilizations needed a more reliable and portable technology, a tool they could depend on for hours at a time. That tool was the oil lamp, a masterpiece of ancient simplicity that would light the world for millennia. Its basic design was so perfect, it remained virtually unchanged for thousands of years. Picture a small, shallow dish, often crafted from baked clay or hammered bronze. In the center, a rounded reservoir held the precious fuel, and pinched onto one side was a small spout. Into this spout, you would drape a twisted linen or flax wick. The wick acted like a straw, drawing the oil up from the reservoir by capillary action, where the exposed tip would then burn with a steady, calm flame. This was a monumental leap forward from an open torch or a sputtering tallow dip. The flame was contained, shielded from breezes, and its brightness and duration could be controlled by simply adjusting the length of the wick. You could carry this lamp safely from room to room, or set it on a ledge to cast a wider pool of light for reading, weaving, or sharing a meal long after sunset. What truly powered this quiet revolution, however, was the incredible variety of fuels discovered across the globe, each a testament to local ingenuity. In the sun-drenched Mediterranean, the fuel of choice was pure golden olive oil, pressed from abundant groves. It burned cleanly with a bright, pleasant light, and was a staple in every Greek symposium and Roman villa. Far to the north, in the Arctic regions where trees were scarce, the Inuit people crafted lamps from soapstone, filling them with rendered seal or whale blubber, a thick, oily fuel that provided both light and crucial warmth in an icy world. Across Asia, sesame oil was highly prized for its clean burn, while in other regions, people used what they had, from fish oil to nut oils to castor oil. The lamp itself became a canvas for culture. Archaeological digs have uncovered lamps shaped like animals, gods, and ships, decorated with intricate patterns and stamped with the marks of their makers. They were not just tools, they were personal possessions, sometimes placed in tombs to light the way in the afterlife. This simple dish of clay and oil became the backbone of daily life, extending the productive day, illuminating sacred texts, and allowing ideas to flourish in the long, quiet hours of the night. It was a silent partner in human progress, its gentle flame witnessing the rise and fall of empires from a single, flickering point of view. But even the elegant oil lamp had its frustrations. Imagine trying to read by a gentle flame, only to have a sudden draft or an accidental nudge send a stream of precious, flammable oil spilling across your table. For centuries, this was a constant hazard. The solution emerged from the forge, not the pottery wheel, in the form of two simple but brilliant metal lamps that would become household staples for generations. First came the Betty lamp, a humble workhorse of light. Named not for a person, but likely from the Old English word Betty, meaning to make better. Its design was all about practical improvement. It looked like a small, shallow iron saucer with a lid. That lid was its genius. A hinged or sliding cover sat over the fuel reservoir, with a small hole for the wick to pass through. This simple cover dramatically reduced evaporation and, more importantly, prevented catastrophic spills if the lamp was knocked over. The Betty lamp often had a pointed end, so you could safely stick it into a crack in a wall or a wooden beam, turning any spot into a lighting fixture. Its companion was the cruci lamp, designed for hanging. The cruci featured two metal dishes, one suspended beneath the other. The upper dish held the oil and the wick, while the lower one acted as a drip catcher for any excess oil, a clever failsafe that further protected your home and your fuel. Both lamps were typically made of wrought iron or tin, materials that could withstand the heat and were cheap to produce. They represented a democratization of better light, moving beyond fragile pottery into durable, everyday metal. The fuel for these lamps marked a shift in the world's economy. While they could burn the old standbys like rendered lard or fish oil, the ideal fuel became whale oil, specifically from the sperm whale. Sperm whale oil burned brighter and cleaner than any animal fat, with less odor and smoke. Its adoption in the 18th and early 19th centuries turned lighting into a global industry, with fleets of ships hunting whales to fuel the lamps of Europe and America. For those who could not afford whale oil, cheaper animal fats like lard remained the norm, meaning the quality of your light still depended on your purse. But no matter the fuel, maintaining these lamps was a relentless daily chore. Lighting a room was not a simple flip of a switch. It was a ritual of preparation and upkeep. Each evening began with trimming the charred tip from the wick with a pair of special scissors, a crucial step to prevent it from smoking and drowning in its own ash. Then you carefully filled the small reservoir with oil, trying not to overfill. Once lit, the lamp required watching. The wick would slowly burn down, needing periodic adjustment to maintain a steady flame. And every few days, the entire lamp had to be taken apart and scrubbed clean of the sticky, black soot that accumulated inside, a messy job that stained hands and clothes. This was the hidden labor behind every hour of extended evening light, a quiet, smoky testament to the human desire to push back the night, one carefully trimmed wick at a time. The pursuit of a better flame led humanity to the open ocean and into one of history's most perilous and profitable industries. For nearly 2 centuries, the cleanest, brightest light you could buy came not from a field or a forest, but from the head of a sperm whale. This creature held a secret in a massive cavity within its skull, a reservoir of a waxy, crystalline substance called spermaceti. When this was processed, it yielded an oil unlike any other. Sperm whale oil burned with a brilliant white flame, producing minimal smoke and almost no foul odor. It was the gold standard of illumination, transforming the quality of light in public spaces and wealthy homes. But this luxury was extracted through a voyage of almost unimaginable hardship and violence. A typical whaling ship would leave port, often from New England, for a journey lasting 3, 4, or even 5 years. Lookouts perched high in the mast scanned the horizon for the telltale spout of a whale. Once sighted, the crew would launch small, open wooden boats, rowing silently until they were close enough to strike. Then, a harpooner would stand and hurl a heavy iron harpoon, attached by a long rope to the boat, into the massive creature. This was not a killing blow, it was an anchor. The wounded whale would dive or flee, towing the fragile boat behind it in a terrifying ride called a Nantucket sleigh ride. The men were at the mercy of the panicked animal, which could sound to crushing depths or turn, and smash their boat to splinters with its tail. Only after the whale was exhausted could the crew approach again to deliver a killing lance. Then began the gruesome process of flensing, stripping the blubber from the carcass alongside the ship in a sea often turned red. The blubber was boiled down in giant try-pots on deck, filling the air with a greasy, overpowering stench that saturated the sailors' clothes and hair for the entire voyage. The precious spermaceti taken from the head was carefully separated and stored. A single large sperm whale could yield up to 500 gallons of oil and a ton of spermaceti wax, funding the entire expedition. This oil lit the street lamps of London and Paris. It illuminated the libraries and parlors of a growing middle class, and it powered the lighthouses that guided other ships safely home. For a time, whale oil was not just a commodity, it was the backbone of an illuminated society, a global industry built on courage, cruelty, and a desperate human need for light. Yet this system carried the seeds of its own end. The demand was insatiable, and the great whales were not an infinite resource. Whalers had to voyage farther and into more dangerous waters to find their quarry, and the staggering cost in both human life and marine life became impossible to ignore. The brilliant, clean flame of the spermaceti lamp, for all its beauty, was a flickering one, destined to be snuffed out by scarcity and a growing unease, forcing the world to search once more for a new kind of light. The brilliant flame of whale oil came with a staggering cost, both in gold and in blood. As the 19th century progressed, a growing middle class demanded affordable, bright light, and inventors scrambled to find a cheaper, synthetic alternative. Their solution was terrifying. Enter camphene, the explosive star of the 1850s, a fuel that promised the brightness of whale oil at a fraction of the price, and delivered it alongside the constant threat of catastrophe. Chemists discovered that by distilling turpentine from pine tree resin and blending it with highly purified alcohol, they could create a clear, potent liquid that burned with a dazzling white flame, far brighter than the best whale oil. It was an instant commercial success. For the first time, a clean, powerful light was within reach of shopkeepers, clerks, and factory workers. But camphene had a sinister, hidden nature. It was wildly, unpredictably volatile. The vapors from this fuel were heavier than air, meaning they could spill invisibly from a leaky lamp reservoir, flow across a table like an unseen ghost, and pool on the floor, waiting for a single spark. That spark could come from anything: the ember from a fireplace, the strike of a match to light another lamp, or even the static electricity from a person's woolen clothing on a dry winter day. The result was not just a fire, but a sudden, violent explosion. Newspapers of the era are filled with grim accounts of camphene disasters. A family in Boston sits down to supper when a lamp on the mantel explodes without warning, showering the room in burning fuel. A tailor in New York leans over his workbench to adjust a lamp, and a flash ignites the vapors, engulfing him and his shop in an instant. These were not rare events. They were a weekly horror reported in cities across America and Europe. The lamps themselves were often to blame. They were cheaply made, with thin metal reservoirs and poorly fitted parts that leaked constantly. The camphene would corrode the soldered seams, creating tiny, invisible fissures. A person might go to bed with a perfectly normal-looking lamp on the table, only to be awakened by a thunderous bang and the roar of flames as the fuel's vapors found an ignition source in the night. This was the dark bargain of the camphene era, a period of frantic, dangerous innovation where the hunger for better light literally put a bomb in every parlor. Families weighed the risk every evening, choosing between the safe, dim glow of an older lard oil lamp or rolling the dice for the glorious, treacherous brilliance of camphene. It was an unsustainable gamble, a clear signal that the world needed not just a brighter light, but a safer one. While the wealthy chased explosive brilliance, the rhythm of light for countless farmsteads and frontier cabins was dictated by a far more humble substance, lard. In a world where every scrap had value, the fat from a butchered hog was not just for cooking, it was fuel. The lard lamp was the epitome of pragmatic, make-do lighting, a technology born from necessity and shaped by what was already in the pantry. Its design could not be simpler. A household container, often a small tin cup, a hollowed-out stone, or even a scallop shell, was filled with rendered lard. Rendering was the key process, slowly melting down the raw pig fat to separate the pure, white lard from any remaining bits of tissue. This created a stable, semi-solid fuel. Into this container, you would place a wick. This was rarely a purchased cotton cord, but more often a twisted strip of old cloth, a bit of yarn, or even a dried rush from the marsh. The wick would soak up the melted fat, and when lit, it would burn with a soft, yellowish flame. This was light built from the cycle of the homestead itself, a direct conversion of autumn's butchering into winter's evening glow. The advantages were clear and vital. It was essentially free, using a byproduct that every farm produced in abundance. It was safe, especially compared to the terrifying volatility of camphene. A lard lamp would not explode if knocked over. The fat would simply solidify as it cooled, containing the hazard. And it was always on hand, requiring no trip to a store or dependence on a distant whaling fleet. But this convenience came with significant compromises. The light it produced was dim and murky, casting a weak pool that made detailed work like sewing or reading a strain on the eyes. The burning fat produced a thick, greasy black smoke that coated the ceiling and walls in a sticky layer of soot, a constant chore to clean. And then there was the smell. On a good evening, it was the faint, savory odor of cooking pork. But lard could and often did spoil. In the warmth of a room, or if kept too long, the fat would turn rancid. Lighting a wick in a pot of rancid lard did not just produce light. It filled the entire cabin with an acrid, stomach-turning stench of old grease, a smell that could linger in fabrics and wood for days. Using a lard lamp was therefore a daily calculation, a balance between frugality and comfort, between having light and enduring the conditions that light created. It represented a world where illumination was never pure or perfect, but was woven into the very fabric of subsistence living, a smoky, smelly, but utterly dependable companion through the long nights of the frontier. The desperate search for a safe, bright, and affordable light finally struck not gold, but black oil. The revolution arrived not from the sea or the forest, but from deep underground, in the form of a clear, thin liquid called kerosene. For centuries, people had known about crude petroleum that seeped from rocks, using it sparingly for waterproofing or as a folk remedy. But in the 1850s, a Canadian geologist named Abraham Gessner perfected a method of distilling this thick black sludge. By heating it in a closed vessel and carefully collecting the vapors that condensed at a specific temperature, he produced a purified fuel that burned with a steady, brilliant flame. He named it kerosene, from the Greek words for wax and oil, and its impact was immediate and profound. Here was a fuel that solved every major problem of its predecessors. It was dramatically cheaper than dwindling, labor-intensive whale oil. It was far safer than the explosive nightmare of camphene, as its vapors were less volatile and less likely to ignite from a stray spark. And it burned brighter and longer than both, with a clean, white light that could last for hours on a single filling. The key to its triumph was scalability. Once Edwin Drake drilled the first successful oil well in Pennsylvania in 1859, petroleum became an industrial commodity, not a curious seep. Refineries sprang up to mass-produce kerosene, turning it from a novelty into a household staple available almost everywhere. The lamp design evolved perfectly to match it. The classic glass chimney kerosene lamp, with its adjustable wick and clear reservoir, became an icon. You could see exactly how much fuel you had left, and the glass chimney acted like a draft, pulling air up to make the flame burn even brighter and cleaner. Suddenly, reliable, excellent light was no longer a luxury. A shopkeeper could keep his store open later. A farmer's wife could mend clothes long after sunset without straining her eyes. A child could do homework at the kitchen table under a clear, steady glow. The kerosene lamp did more than light rooms. It extended the useful day for millions, reshaping daily rhythms and boosting productivity. It became the first truly global light, found in a log cabin on the American prairie, a tenement in London, and a merchant's house in Shanghai. For the first time in human history, a safe, bright, and cheap flame was within reach of nearly everyone, finally breaking the ancient link between darkness and the end of work. This new light demanded a new kind of vessel, an object designed to tame the flame and turn it into a reliable servant. The classic kerosene lamp was a masterpiece of Victorian engineering, a symphony of simple parts working in perfect harmony. At its base sat the font, a clear glass reservoir that held the precious kerosene, allowing you to see exactly how much fuel remained. Rising from the font was the burner, a brass or nickel-plated assembly that held the heart of the operation, the flat, woven cotton wick. A small thumb wheel or knob on the side allowed you to raise or lower this wick with exquisite precision, controlling the size and brightness of the flame with a gentle turn. But the true genius was the glass chimney. This slender, fluted tube was not just for decoration or safety. When placed over the lit wick, it acted like the stack of a fireplace. It drew a steady current of air up from the base, feeding oxygen to the flame, which made it burn hotter, brighter, and completely smokeless. The chimney also shielded the flame from drafts, eliminating the annoying flicker and gutter that had plagued lights for millennia. For the first time, a lamp produced a steady, unwavering column of light, as reliable as a piece of furniture. Specific designs became household names, each with its own purpose. The Rochester lamp, with its sturdy font and elegant, often painted glass base, was the dependable workhorse of the parlor and kitchen. Its robust design made it affordable for millions, and its familiar shape became synonymous with evening light itself. For more focused tasks, the student lamp offered a revolutionary design. It often featured a small, cylindrical font and a distinctive claw-footed base, but its key innovation was a green glass shade. This shade directed light downward in a concentrated pool, perfect for a desk or reading chair, while the green tint was thought to reduce eye strain during long hours of study. These were not merely tools, they were central characters in domestic life. Their soft, golden glow defined the evening hours, enabling a new culture of after-dark productivity and leisure. A family could now gather around a single lamp, the mother mending socks, the father reading the newspaper, and the children doing their lessons, all bathed in the same warm, shared light. The lamp became the literal and figurative centerpiece of the home after sunset, fostering conversation, education, and quiet industry. Their influence extended beyond function into the very aesthetics of the age. Lamp manufacturers competed with increasingly ornate designs. Fonts were made of milk glass, painted with floral patterns, or cut with intricate designs that cast beautiful shadows when lit. Chimneys were etched and decorated, while bases took the forms of classical urns or sculpted figures. A beautiful lamp was a point of pride, a symbol of refinement and technological optimism displayed prominently in the front window or on the mantel. This object, born from industrial distillation and mass production, had become an essential piece of domestic art, its gentle flame illuminating not just rooms, but the very texture of 19th century life. It represented the pinnacle of flame-based lighting, a perfect balance of safety, affordability, and brilliance. Yet even as these lamps reached their peak, a quiet rival was being born in laboratories, a light that required no flame at all, and would ultimately render the gentle glow of kerosene into a memory. While kerosene lamps brightened individual homes, an even more ambitious system was beginning to transform entire cities, turning night into a new kind of day. This was the era of gaslight, a parallel revolution that required not just a new lamp, but a whole new infrastructure. The magic began not with a wick, but with a furnace. In massive, soot-blackened gasworks on the outskirts of towns, workers would shovel coal into enormous, airtight ovens. Heated to extreme temperatures without any air, the coal did not burn. It instead broke down chemically in a process called distillation. This released a mixture of volatile gases, which were then scrubbed and purified, leaving behind primarily a flammable gas we now call coal gas. This invisible fuel was then pumped into a vast, creeping network of underground pipes, a subterranean circulatory system for light, stretching beneath the streets of London, Paris, and New York. The first and most dramatic application was public lighting. Before gas, city streets after dark were realms of shadow and danger, lit only by the occasional, feeble glow of an oil lamp. Gas changed everything. Lamplighters with long poles would move from post to post at dusk, opening a valve and touching a flame to the mantel. And suddenly, a whole block would be bathed in a steady, bright, yellowish-white glow. The effect was revolutionary. Major thoroughfares became safe for evening strolls. Shop windows could be illuminated, encouraging nighttime commerce. Crime rates in well-lit areas plummeted as dark alleys ceased to exist. The very character of the city changed, giving rise to a vibrant new nightlife of theaters, cafes, and social promenades that thrived under the artificial sun. Soon, this pipeline of light was extended into private residences, but only for the very wealthy. To have gas piped into your home was the ultimate status symbol, a marvel of modern convenience. Specially designed fixtures replaced oil lamps, with elegant glass globes diffusing the light. The experience, however, was distinctly industrial. The light itself was significantly brighter and whiter than any flame from oil or kerosene, banishing shadows from corners. But it came with a constant soft hiss from the jet of gas, a reminder of the pressurized fuel flowing through the walls. The fixtures threw off a noticeable heat, warming a room in winter but making it stifling in summer. And there was a constant, subtle odor, the smell of coal gas, which was not just unpleasant but carried a hidden, deadly risk. If a jet was blown out or a pipe leaked, the odorless, toxic carbon monoxide in the gas could silently fill a room, leading to headaches, nausea, and in poorly ventilated spaces, unconsciousness and death by asphyxiation. So the brilliant, steady light of gas was a double-edged sword, a magnificent achievement that tamed the urban night and dazzled the wealthy, yet one that whispered a constant, hissing warning of the invisible dangers modernity had piped directly into the heart of the home. But the most spectacular light of the 19th century was not meant for reading or sewing. It was designed for pure, breathtaking spectacle. In the wings of grand theaters and opera houses, a technician would perform a delicate and dangerous ritual. He would ignite a roaring flame of pure hydrogen and oxygen, gases fed through separate tubes, and direct this intensely hot jet onto a small, white cylinder of quicklime, a material chemically known as calcium oxide. Under this searing blast, the lime did not burn. It instead glowed with a blinding, incandescent white light, a phenomenon called limelight. This was not a gentle glow, it was a sun captured in a lens. By placing this superheated lime block in front of a curved mirror, technicians could focus its radiance into a narrow, brilliant beam of pure white light. On stage, this beam became the world's first true spotlight. It could follow a single soprano as she moved across the stage, isolating her in a pool of celestial radiance that made her costumes shimmer and her expressions visible to every person in the vast, darkened auditorium. The effect was magical, transforming performances by creating a focal point of sheer visual drama. That same intense, focused beam made it invaluable for lighthouses, where its piercing ray could cut through fog and storm to warn ships of treacherous coastlines for miles out to sea. Yet this dazzling technology was forever confined to professional use. The apparatus was a complex, hazardous piece of engineering. It required tanks of highly explosive gases, precise pressure regulators, and constant, skilled supervision to prevent a catastrophic leak or misfire. The lime block itself would slowly erode under the heat, requiring replacement. This was not a technology for the home. It was a tool for creating awe. Its legacy, however, burns brightly in our language. To be the person placed in that focused, brilliant beam was to be the undisputed center of attention. Thus, any performer who stepped into that circle was literally, and then figuratively, in the limelight, a phrase we still use today for anyone thrust into the public eye, a linguistic fossil from an era when the most powerful light on Earth was born from a block of stones set on fire by science. Even as gaslights hissed and kerosene lamps glowed, the humble candle refused to fade into darkness. It experienced a quiet revolution of its own in the 19th century, transformed by chemistry and machinery from a smoky, inconsistent product into a reliable, modern commodity. The first breakthrough came from an unlikely source, the same animal fats that had always been used, but treated with a new scientific understanding. Chemists discovered that by treating tallow with certain chemicals, they could separate it into two distinct substances, oleine, a liquid oil, and stearin, a hard, white, crystalline fat. This stearin was a game changer. Candles made from it were vastly superior to old tallow dips. They were significantly harder, so they would not bend or melt in a warm room. They burned much longer, with a brighter, cleaner flame that produced far less of that familiar, greasy smoke. For the first time, you could have an affordable candle that did not smell like a burning kitchen. But the true revolution in candle making arrived from the same place as kerosene, the oil well. When petroleum was distilled to make kerosene, a waxy byproduct was left behind. This substance, paraffin wax, was chemically inert, odorless, and burned with an exceptionally clean, bright light. It was the perfect candle material. Best of all, it could be produced in staggering quantities as the petroleum industry boomed, making it incredibly cheap. The final piece of the puzzle was automation. For centuries, candles were made by hand, either through the slow, repetitive dipping of wicks or by pouring wax into individual molds. Then came the continuous molding machine. Picture a large metal wheel turning slowly on its side. Attached to its rim are dozens of hollow, candle-shaped tubes. As the wheel rotates, each tube dips into a vat of molten paraffin, then passes through a cooling chamber where the wax solidifies. By the time the tube completes its rotation, a finished candle is ejected, and the process begins again, an endless mechanical cycle. This machine could produce thousands of perfectly identical candles in a single day, driving the price down to mere pennies. The result was that candles, once the primary light source, found a new and enduring role. They became the dependable backup, the light you reached for during a power outage or when the kerosene ran out. They were the safe, simple option for a child's bedside. And crucially, they became objects of decoration and atmosphere. The new, clean burning paraffin and stearin candles could be made in beautiful colors and shapes, scented with pleasant oils, and used to create ambience on dinner tables and in parlors without any worry of foul odors or dripping mess. So while the 19th century was lit by the steady flames of oil and gas, it was still punctuated by the gentle, familiar flicker of a candle, now refined by science and born from an assembly line, a timeless form of light reborn for a modern age. The relentless pursuit of light forced humanity to adapt in the planet's most unforgiving landscapes. In the vast, sunless winters of the Arctic, survival itself depended on mastering a very different kind of flame, one that provided not just vision, but life-giving warmth. Here, the tree was unknown, and plant oils were a fantasy. The solution was carved from the land itself, the quillic, a crescent-shaped lamp hewn from soft, heat-retaining soapstone. This was not merely a light source. It was the beating heart of the Inuit home. Its fuel was the dense, energy-rich blubber from seals or whales, rendered into oil. A strip of dried Arctic cotton moss, laid along the lamp's curved edge, served as the wick. When lit, it did not produce a tall, dancing flame, but a low, steady, blue-tinged burn that was incredibly efficient. The genius of the quillic was its dual purpose. Its radiant heat was enough to melt ice for drinking water, to dry sodden mittens and boots, and to slowly cook meals, often a piece of meat or fish suspended above it. In the close confines of a snow-block igloo, this single lamp could raise the temperature just enough to make the difference between life and death during a long blizzard. The light it cast was a soft, warm glow that illuminated the faces of a family gathered close, a focal point for storytelling, sewing of sealskin clothing, and the quiet rituals of the long night. Tending the quillic was traditionally women's work, a skilled and sacred responsibility. The caretaker would carefully adjust the moss wick with a slender bone pick, controlling the flame's size and heat, and would add blubber chips to maintain the burn. Its light was so central that the lamp's orientation within the dwelling held meaning, and to let it go out was considered a grave misfortune. This technology stands as a profound testament to human ingenuity, a perfect adaptation where light, heat, and culture fused into a single, elegant object carved from stone and powered by the sea, allowing life to flourish literally on the edge of darkness. Across the globe, in the sophisticated courts and tranquil homes of East Asia, the quest for light took on a deeply artistic and philosophical character. In Japan, the pursuit was not for the brightest flame, but for the most harmonious glow. This ideal was embodied in the andon, a lantern of serene beauty and profound practicality. Its structure was a study in elegant simplicity, a wooden or bamboo frame over which a delicate paper screen was stretched. Inside this protective shell, a small oil lamp, often burning inexpensive rapeseed oil, would be placed. The genius of the andin was its purpose. The paper did not block the light, it transformed it. The harsh, direct flame was softened into a gentle, diffused radiance that filled a room with a warm, even illumination, free of harsh shadows. This was light designed for contemplation and quiet labor. You would find andin in the study of a scholar, its calm light perfect for reading or writing poetry. It illuminated the workspace of an artisan carefully painting a scroll or weaving fabric. In a traditional home, its portable design meant it could be carried safely from room to room, its paper walls shielding the flame from drafts. The light of the andin was never meant to conquer the night, but to make a peaceful agreement with it, creating pockets of tranquil visibility that honored the natural world rather than defying it. This reflected a core aesthetic principle, where utility and beauty were inseparable, and where the medium itself, the soft paper and natural frame, became part of the experience of the light. Meanwhile, in the imperial palaces of China, lighting was an opportunity to demonstrate supreme artistry and technological ambition. Chinese palace lamps were not mere utilities. They were breathtaking declarations of power and culture. Crafted by teams of master artisans, these lamps could be monumental in scale, constructed from the finest materials, silk stretched over intricate frames, panels of polished glass, or translucent sheets of horn that glowed like captured moonlight. Their shapes were endlessly inventive, taking the forms of mythical dragons, blooming lotuses, or complex geometric puzzles. The most impressive designs were engineering marvels in their own right. Some featured large, hidden reservoirs that could hold enough oil to burn for days without needing a refill, a necessity for illuminating vast throne rooms during lengthy ceremonies. Others incorporated clever systems of counterweights and pulleys, allowing them to be raised or lowered from towering ceilings with ease. The designs often served multiple purposes, with frames acting as vents to carry away heat and smoke, preserving the precious paintings on palace walls. Every element was symbolic. A lamp shaped like a carp leaping from waves symbolized success and perseverance. The color red, often used in the silk shades, represented joy and good fortune. To stand in a hall illuminated by these masterpieces was to be surrounded by moving art, where light and shadow played across carvings and paintings, telling stories of the empire's history and the emperor's divine mandate. Here, light was fully integrated into the architecture of power, a radiant proof of a civilization's creative and technical zenith, proving that the vessel for a flame could be just as important as the flame itself. But that brilliant, steady light came with a hidden, insidious cost. For all its convenience, every form of pre-electric lighting introduced a spectrum of dangers into the home, a constant negotiation between seeing clearly and staying safe. The most immediate and universal hazard was the quality of the light itself. Reading, sewing, or doing any detailed work by the dim, flickering flame of a tallow candle or a rushlight was a recipe for chronic eye strain. The light was not steady, it danced and wavered, forcing the eyes to constantly refocus. The contrast was poor, with deep shadows obscuring details on a page or in a piece of fabric. People would instinctively bring their work closer and closer to the weak flame, squinting for hours, leading to headaches, blurred vision, and a permanent, weary ache behind the eyes. This was simply the accepted toll of evening productivity. Far more dangerous was what you breathed. Every flame that was not perfectly tuned produced smoke and fumes. The greasy black soot from tallow and lard lamps coated lungs as well as ceilings, contributing to chronic coughs and respiratory ailments. But the greatest airborne threat arrived with the modern marvel of gaslight. While coal gas itself had a distinctive odor, the real killer was odorless. Incomplete combustion in a gas jet or a leak from a poorly fitted pipe would release carbon monoxide. This invisible, toxic gas would silently fill a room, binding to the blood's hemoglobin more effectively than oxygen. Victims would first experience a dull headache, then dizziness and nausea, often mistaking it for a simple fatigue or illness. In a closed bedroom or a tightly sealed parlor, the buildup could lead to unconsciousness and death by asphyxiation, a tragic fate that befell many who embraced the new technology without understanding its hidden breadth. Then there was the ever-present catastrophic risk of fire. An overturned oil lamp, a curtain brushing against a gas mantle, a child knocking over a candle. Any of these mundane accidents could unleash an inferno in minutes. Homes were built of wood and filled with textiles, and the fuels themselves were eager accelerants. City-wide conflagrations were often traced back to a single, careless light. The Great Fire of New York in 1845, which destroyed hundreds of buildings, began in a whale oil and turpentine warehouse. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871, though its exact origin is legendary, spread with terrifying speed through a city built largely of wood, its tinder dry structures no match for flying embers. These were not rare anomalies. They were the periodic, devastating price of an illuminated society. Fire brigades were volunteer forces, and water had to be pumped by hand. For most families, a house fire was not just a loss of property, it was often a death sentence, with escape routes quickly cut off by roaring flames and choking smoke. So every evening, when a family gathered around their lamp, they were making a quiet calculation. They were trading clear sight for straining eyes, warmth and light for poisoned air, and extended hours of life for the constant, flickering shadow of total loss. The history of light is not just a story of brighter flames, but of learning to live with the dangers those flames inevitably brought inside. Behind every hour of gentle lamplight lay an hour of greasy, tedious work. To keep a home illuminated was not a passive act. It was a daily ritual of maintenance, a relentless choreography of trimming, filling, wiping, and scrubbing that defined the rhythm of countless evenings. This was the hidden labor of light, an unseen industry that fell almost entirely to women and servants, transforming the simple act of seeing after dark into a monument to domestic effort. Consider the nightly routine with a common oil lamp. Before you could even think of lighting it, you had to address the wick. Each previous use left its tip charred into a black, bulbous mushroom of carbon. If you lit it in that state, it would smolder and smoke, drowning the flame in its own ash and filling the room with a foul haze. So, with a pair of special, soot-stained scissors, you carefully snipped off this charred end, a precise cut that ensured a clean, bright burn. It was a small, mindful task repeated every single evening. Then came the refilling. You would lift the glass chimney, unscrew the burner, and carefully pour precious whale oil or kerosene into the font from a small, often grimy can. Spillage was a constant anxiety, a greasy stain on the tablecloth or a slick on the floor waiting to catch a spark. Once lit, the lamp was not self-sufficient. As the evening wore on, the wick would slowly burn down, and the flame would begin to dim and falter. Someone had to notice, get up, and give the little thumb wheel a turn, raising the wick back into its ideal position, a tiny adjustment that might need repeating several times before bedtime. And then, every few days, The entire apparatus demanded a deep clean. The glass chimney, inside and out, would be coated with a thin, stubborn film of black soot. It had to be washed with hot water and vinegar, then polished to a sparkling clarity with a soft cloth, for a dirty chimney drastically reduced the light. The burner itself, where the wick sat, became a sticky trap for congealed oil and carbon. It required disassembly and a thorough scrubbing with a bristle brush, a messy job that left hands stained and reeking of fuel. For those relying on candles, the tasks were different but no less constant. Trimming the wick was just as essential. Making candles at home was a major seasonal undertaking, the hot, smelly work of rendering fat or dipping wicks, while buying them represented a significant chunk of the household budget. And for the poorest, the labor was even more fundamental. It meant trips to the marsh to harvest rushes in late summer, the careful peeling and drying of each stem, and the slow, careful process of soaking them in saved kitchen grease. This was light built not from a store-bought commodity, but from gathered and processed raw materials, a direct tax of time and toil. This endless cycle of upkeep made the arrival of electric light feel like a miracle of liberation. Flipping a switch did not just bring brightness, it erased an entire category of domestic drudgery. It banished the soot, the stains, the smell of fuel, and the constant, watchful maintenance. The revolution was not merely in the quality of the light, but in the sudden, stunning gift of time and cleanliness it bestowed upon the home. This constant labor was the price paid for a fundamental truth: light dictated time. For millennia, the sun was not just a celestial body, it was the world's only reliable clock. When it dipped below the horizon, the day's productive work, for the vast majority of people, simply ended. In a world lit by faint, expensive flames, you could not plow a field, mend a net, or thresh grain in the dark. Social life contracted into the tight circle around the hearth or the single tallow dip, limited to conversations, storytelling, or simple handicrafts that required little visual precision. The rhythm of life was circadian in the most literal sense. A long stretch of daylight activity followed by a long stretch of restful, or restless, darkness. This solar tyranny shaped everything, from architecture to sleep patterns. Homes were designed with deep eaves and small windows to keep out heat and cold, but this also made interiors dark even during the day, so vital tasks were performed in doorways or courtyards to catch every possible ray of sun. The invention of better lighting did not just brighten rooms, it fractured this ancient rhythm. The introduction of gaslight in cities created, for the first time, a true night shift. Factories could operate around the clock, their windows glowing against the night sky, driven by the demand for more goods and the owner's desire to keep expensive machinery running constantly. This new schedule was grueling and transformative, pulling workers, including children, into a world of artificial time that severed their connection to the natural cycle. On a smaller scale, the reliable kerosene lamp extended the useful day within the home. A shopkeeper could balance his books after closing. A seamstress could take in more piecework, sewing late into the evening under a steady flame. Perhaps most profoundly, it revolutionized reading. For centuries, books were luxury items partly because reading them required expensive light. The spread of affordable lamps meant that literacy was no longer confined to the daylight hours or the wealthy classes. Families could gather and read aloud from a newspaper or a novel. Individuals could study and educate themselves after a full day of manual labor. A quiet revolution in self-improvement that was literally fueled by kerosene. This new abundance of evening light also reshaped the home itself. Interior architecture began to change. The placement of furniture started to account for where the lamp would sit on the table. Mantels and shelves were designed to hold these new fixtures, and as light became less of a fleeting treasure and more of a dependable utility, social life expanded. Evening visits to neighbors became more practical. Parlor games, music, and detailed crafts flourished in the long evenings, fostering a new domestic culture centered on the soft, golden pool of lamplight. The very concept of leisure time as something distinct from work time and happening after dark was born from this technological leap. The fight against darkness was never just about seeing, it was about claiming more of life itself, hour by precious hour, from the grip of the night. Yet even as kerosene perfected the flame, a new and startling kind of light was already flickering to life, born not from fire, but from a crackling spark. The race to invent a practical electric light was not a single eureka moment, but a chaotic scramble of competing visions. The first to truly break through was not a gentle bulb, but a roaring miniature sun called the arc light. Its principle was simple in theory, but dramatic in execution. If you take two rods of carbon, touch them together to start a current, and then slowly pull them apart, the electricity will leap across the gap in a sustained, dazzling arc of raw plasma. This arc burned at temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, emitting a harsh, bluish-white light of blinding intensity. For the first time in history, humanity had created a light source that could outshine the noonday sun itself. This raw power made it instantly useful for places where mere brightness was the only goal. Lighthouses adopted arc lamps, their piercing beams cutting through fog and storm with unprecedented range, saving countless ships from rocky coasts. Vast factory floors and shipyards, where detailed work was less important than sheer visibility, installed these crackling giants on high poles, banishing shadows and enabling round-the-clock industrial production. And in city squares, an arc lamp mounted on a tall tower could transform night into a strange, artificial day, casting sharp, stark shadows, and turning the surrounding darkness even deeper by contrast. But for all its brilliance, the arc light was a beast. It was deafeningly loud, with a constant, sizzling hiss like frying fat. It was voracious, consuming its carbon rod electrodes like pencil leads in a furnace, requiring constant mechanical adjustment to maintain the perfect gap as they burned away. Servicing them was a job for trained engineers, not homeowners. They emitted dangerous ultraviolet rays and occasional showers of hot carbon sparks, making them a fire hazard anywhere near fabrics or curtains. Most damningly, they were insatiable gluttons for power, requiring massive banks of batteries or direct connection to a dedicated generator. You could not simply plug one into a wall, because there were no walls with plugs. The entire electrical infrastructure needed to be built around it. So while the arc light was a magnificent proof of concept, a thrilling glimpse of an electric future, it was utterly unsuitable for the home. It was the light of the public sphere, of industry and navigation, a brilliant but uninvited guest that announced the coming revolution while making it clear that a gentler, more domesticated form of electric light was still waiting to be born. That brilliant, savage arc of light was a spectacular dead end for the home. The true electric future would arrive not with a roar, but with a gentle, enduring glow. The final revolution began in the quiet of a laboratory with a simple, elegant idea: contain a filament inside a glass bulb, run electricity through it until it grew hot enough to shine, and prevent it from burning up. Making this idea a reality, however, was a puzzle that consumed decades and the minds of inventors across the globe. Two names would become forever linked to its solution: Joseph Swan in England and Thomas Edison in America. Their work was not about a single moment of genius, but about systematically solving two seemingly impossible problems. The first was the atmosphere itself. Any filament, whether made of paper, bamboo, or platinum, would instantly combust if surrounded by oxygen. The answer was to remove the air entirely. Inventors learned to use a mercury vacuum pump to suck nearly all the air out of the glass bulb, creating a tiny man-made void where fire could not live, but incandescence could. The second and far trickier challenge was the filament. What material could you heat to white-hot temperatures, time and time again, without simply disintegrating? Early attempts were heartbreakingly brief. A bulb might shine for a few minutes or a few hours before the filament blackened, thinned, and snapped, plunging the experiment back into darkness. The breakthrough came from carbon. Swan demonstrated a bulb using a carbonized paper filament. Edison, after testing thousands of materials, famously found success with a carbonized thread of cotton sewing thread, baked until it was a fragile, black sliver of pure carbon. This humble filament, sealed in its vacuum bulb, glowed steadily for over 40 hours in 1879, a duration that was practically miraculous at the time. Soon, Edison's team would improve it further with carbonized bamboo, pushing the lifespan to over 1,200 hours. This was the birth of the practical incandescent bulb. But its light did not flood the world overnight. For years, it was a costly novelty. The bulbs themselves were expensive, and more importantly, they required an entirely new ecosystem to function. A network of power stations, generators, and wires that did not yet exist. Edison understood this completely. He did not just sell bulbs, he sold a system. He built the first commercial power station on Pearl Street in New York City, and slowly, street by street, block by block, he wired the city for light. The transition was slow, uneven, and fiercely contested. Gas companies fought a bitter rearguard action, arguing their light was warmer, more reliable, and already piped into every home. For a generation, many houses were built with dual fixtures, gas jets and electric sockets side by side, a physical testament to a world in flux. The gentle, steady light of the incandescent bulb was the beginning of the end for the long, smoky, laborious history we have just journeyed through. It was the promise that would, within a few decades, render the whale oil can, the kerosene reservoir, and the gas mantle into curiosities, consigning the delicate choreography of trimming wicks and scrubbing chimneys to the realm of memory. So the electric bulb did not simply switch on and banish the old ways. For nearly half a century, from the 1880s well into the 1920s, the world existed in a strange, flickering twilight of competing lights. This was an era of layered illumination, where the gentle hiss of gas, the warm glow of kerosene, and the stark new brilliance of electricity all shared the same streets, and sometimes even the same rooms. The transition was not a revolution, but a slow, uneven fade. In the great cities, electricity was the dazzling new aristocrat. Wealthy homeowners in Manhattan or London would host electric light parties, a stunning social event where guests would gather in a drawing room to witness the miracle of a single pull chain flooding the space with a steady, shadowless radiance. The first department stores to install electric lighting found it transformed their business, as fabrics and goods could be seen in their true colors, day or night, drawing crowds of curious shoppers. Yet this wonder came at a princely cost. The initial installation of wiring and fixtures was prohibitively expensive, and the electricity itself was billed at a high rate, making it a luxury as clear as any beeswax candle had been centuries before. For the middle class, the choice was often one of cautious compromise. It was common for a family to have a single electric fixture in the parlor, a proud centerpiece, while the rest of the house remained lit by the familiar, dependable kerosene lamps they could afford to run. And in the vast rural stretches of America and Europe, electricity was a distant rumor. For farmers and villagers, life after sunset continued to be measured by the lamp's reservoir and the length of a wick, a reality that would persist until the 1930s or even later. This divide was not just economic, it was deeply psychological. To many, electricity was a mysterious and frightening force. People spoke of it not as power, but as the electric fluid, a ghostly substance that flowed invisibly through walls, capable of causing sudden death or mysterious fires. Newspapers ran sensational stories of linemen electrocuted on the poles, or of houses burning down due to faulty wiring. This fear was not entirely irrational. Early electrical systems were often poorly installed and genuinely hazardous. Utility companies faced an uphill battle to win public trust. They launched extensive advertising campaigns that framed electricity not as a dangerous novelty, but as the ultimate symbol of modernity, cleanliness, and progress. They emphasized its safety compared to the open flame, showing how it could not asphyxiate you like a gas leak or spill and burn like kerosene. Salesmen demonstrated how electric light kept rooms cooler in summer and did not blacken ceilings with soot. They even offered free wiring for a limited time to get their foot in the door, literally wiring the house to create a dependency on their service. It was a slow persuasion, a re-education of the public's relationship with darkness itself. The old lights, trusted for generations, faded not with a bang, but with the quiet, persistent click of a switch being chosen, again and again, over the strike of a match. The electric switch did not erase the past. It simply moved it to a different shelf. Our ancient relationship with flame-based light did not vanish. It transformed, finding new purpose in a world it helped to build. Candles, for instance, have been utterly liberated from their practical duties. No longer needed to see a book or navigate a hallway, they now serve a higher calling, atmosphere. Their gentle, flickering glow is an antidote to the sterile, constant brightness of LEDs, a deliberate choice to reintroduce warmth and intimacy into a space. They remain indispensable in emergencies, of course, a primal comfort when the grid fails and the modern world goes dark. And in countless religious and spiritual traditions, from cathedrals to home altars, the candle's flame retains its ancient symbolism of hope, remembrance, and the human spirit, a direct, unbroken line back to those first hearths in the cave. The oil lamp, too, found a second life far from the parlor. Its design is perfected in the modern camping lantern, a reliable companion that trades kerosene for cleaner fuels, but operates on the same timeless principle of a wick drawing fuel to a flame. For those living off the grid or seeking profound self-sufficiency, mastering these old technologies is not a hobby. It is a vital skill, a way to reclaim independence from the fragile network of wires and transformers. You can still buy beautifully crafted replica oil lamps and gas lanterns, not for primary light, but as decorative pieces that cast a nostalgic, golden pool on a patio or in a garden, a conscious echo of a slower time. This living history is most vividly preserved in historical reenactments and living history museums. Here, costumed interpreters patiently trim wicks, fill Betty lamps with lard oil, and demonstrate the careful art of lighting a rushlight. These are not just demonstrations of obsolete gadgets. They are immersive lessons in the rhythm of daily life. They show us that lighting a home was a sensory experience, full of specific sounds, smells, and textures. The hiss of a gas jet, the soft scent of beeswax, the feel of soot on your fingers. These technologies were not just tools, they were partners in the daily dance of existence, shaping how families interacted, how work was done, and how the boundaries between day and night were negotiated for thousands of years. They remind us that every hour of light was once earned, through labor, risk, and ingenuity, a fragile victory over the dark that we now summon with an effortless, silent flick. That long journey from the cave's hearth to the electric switch is a map of human ambition itself. It is a story told in flickering shadows and sudden flares, a relentless push against the natural limit of the sun. We began with a captured wildfire, a dangerous ally that offered warmth and a fragile circle of visibility at a terrifying cost. We saw light become a currency, with the rich bathing in the honeyed glow of beeswax, while the poor made do with the smoky sputter of tallow or the faint, greasy burn of a marsh rush. Each leap forward carried its own paradox. The elegant oil lamp extended the day but demanded constant care. The brilliant whale oil lamp fueled a global industry of astonishing peril. The dazzling camphene lamp brought affordable brightness alongside the constant whisper of explosion. Even the triumphant kerosene lamp, that steady beacon of the 19th century home, required a daily ritual of soot and trimming. This was never a straight line of progress, but a winding path of trade-offs, where every gain in brightness or convenience was balanced against new dangers, new costs, and new kinds of labor, almost always shouldered by those with the least. The history of light, therefore, is not merely a technical catalog. It is a social history illuminating deep inequalities. It is a history of risk, written in the ashes of burned homes and the silent threat of poisoned air. And it is, above all, a testament to a stubborn, beautiful persistence, the refusal to let the setting sun have the final word. So the next time your hand moves almost without thought to flip a switch, pause for just a second. Behind that effortless flood of light are centuries of ingenuity, toil, and courage. There is the harpooner on a storm-tossed sea, the woman patiently peeling rushes by firelight, the chemist risking a blast to find a better fuel, and the child squinting at a schoolbook in a dim, golden pool. That simple act connects you to all of them. We would love to hear if this history lives on in your own family stories, or perhaps a grandparent's tale of a coal oil lantern on the farm, or an old glass chimney discovered in an attic. And if you ever get the chance, visit a living history museum. Stand in a room lit only by a candle or an oil lamp. Feel the heat, notice the shadows, smell the air. In that gentle, active glow, you will not just see the past. You will feel the weight and the wonder of the long night we finally left